All right, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Super excited to have you here with us today. Huge show planned. We always have a lot of players come through and get a little bit of perspective, maybe get a former player who is a current coach. Going to be joined with Buckeye linebacker coach James Laurinaitis. So super excited to sit down and talk with him about the development of the room, everything that's going on there, his secrets to recruiting, of how he's been able to just really get it rolling there at Ohio State. And Joshua, the fact that he grabbed the best linebacker out of the state of Ohio, the best linebacker out of the state of Texas, and the best linebacker out of the state of Florida by rankings, whatever that means. But that's pretty darn impressive because those are pretty, I would say, three of the top six football states for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you start talking about a track record early on, and it's no shock, I think, to us who know him, but think, people ask the question, newer coach, new guy on the block, how's he going to do? Seems like he's settling in just fine.
Yeah, that was the question. What would he want to recruit? Would he be a good recruiter? And I'm like, he'd be a good the best recruiters, Joshua, are almost always former players. And you look at this Ohio State staff where you have Tim Walton, Brian Hartline, James Laurinaitis, and you look at the three position groups that are really crushing it this year and over the last couple years as well. It's those three guys, and they all have NFL experience playing and coaching, and then they now have a Buckeye alum experience, and they're here, and they seem to just be cleaning up.
Yeah, and I get the want to question for, former players and guys who got a little money in their pocket, right? Like recruiting's not the easiest thing in the world, but if you ever met James, if he's going to do something, he's going to do it to the best of his ability. So he's a relationship guy. I really think that he loves the development aspect of it. So to see the dudes on the trail and then to have a vision for what he thinks their career could be, it's no shock.
Oh, it's amazing. And here's the thing, though, guys may like get a little tired of it from time to time, but if you're really good, like it's a lot easier for you. Like you don't have to recruit 20 guys to get two or three. You recruit five guys to get two or three, and those guys are all as competitive as hell. And so they want the best players to be able to coach and guys that honestly like fit in their room well, so it makes their job easier the rest of the time.
Recruiting's like investing in a way where
Yeah.
they say the first 100,000's difficult, the first million's difficult, but then you get the compounding returns, and all of a sudden, like you still got to put the work in, you got to be diligent about it, but the work builds on itself. It gets much easier, and so right now it's kind of the beginning phase where you're putting money into the account, but he's going to see the compounding effects here, and I don't think it's going to take very long.
So also on the show we got coming up, take a look around college football. There's some other stories and things that we're going to dive into. Get our tailgate talk questions from listeners brought to you by Garage Beer, which is going to be tremendous. But first, ESPN, they released their rankings of the top 25 college football stadiums. And I'm gonna be honest, Josh, like I'm a little bit disappointed because you get in the top five, and there's always going to be, just there's this and there's that, and you're just talking about opinions. It's a subjective measurement, but you start like creeping down the list a little bit. That's where it gets disappointing. And so Tiger Stadium for LSU is one. All right, I'm fine with that. The issue that it starts out with, and I heard my guy Bo Bishop on the fan talking about this, him and Tim May, like you have UCLA, the Rose Bowl at number two. Now, the Rose Bowl is an iconic venue and it's
Yes.
absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. However, like when UCLA is playing in it, there is hardly anyone in. You can see, Joshua, the entirety of that stadium.
Yeah, the Rose Bowl, I get this. I get why it's two, right? Like if you've ever been to a Rose Bowl game, it is one of the greatest things you could ever see. It ain't like that every time you go there. Like I think you really have to put that context there is like this. It's just that's not what it is consistently. But when it's at its best, I do think it's one of the best in America.
Absolutely. Apex, it's great. That's how I try to judge these off their apex, but UCLA hasn't had an apex in
No.
years. Now, the Rose Bowl games, like when you watch, Ohio State Oregon game in the Rose Bowl, like that's a stadium you feel like you would want to be in. Get the sun setting over the mountains. It's absolutely gorgeous. Everything lines up. So you get that. Here's the problem too. Then we have Michigan at number three with the big house. And people always say you're biased because of the rivalry. I can sit here and tell you that I think Penn State is one of the most phenomenal
Yeah.
whiteout night game environments. I would put that up against anything in the country. And I have
Yep.
no problem saying like they are good. It is fantastic. I've never been in Michigan Stadium where I felt like there were the overwhelming energy of the crowd. It's big, but due to its like bowl-like construction and it's dug down in, like it's not really imposing from the outside and it's not really imposing from the inside.
Yeah, I'd take the rivalry out of it. I've played in two whiteouts. I've covered one as a media member. I've been to Penn State other times. Like even outside of the whiteout, I think the environment is just like it's better than what you get at Michigan. And Michigan, like again, history I think plays into this for a lot of people. The sheer size of that venue plays into it for a lot of people. Some of the impactful games, especially the ones that we've seen over the last couple of years. 2021 Ohio State Michigan game, right? Like the scenics from that with the snow falling, I totally get it. This past year with some of the drama from the Ohio State Michigan game, like I think recency might play into it a little bit for when people were filling out their ballots here. But like based off of what I've experienced, like environment wise, Penn State for sure, I would put over Michigan.
Absolutely. And they've got Notre Dame at 4. Okay, the history, I get a lot of that. Whatever. It's fine. They've got Beaver Stadium at 5, which I'm like, that's a top 5. Penn State 5. Now, I've only been in number 6 for a non-game. We did a walkthrough there when I was with New England. We played in Seattle. But Husky Stadium looks beautiful. They've got like
Yeah,
the roof, and I don't know if you played there, Josh, or you've been
I've
there. It
not.
is super loud from what I've been
Yep,
told when they're rolling and they've got it going. So
yep,
they're there at 6. And then you've got Ohio Stadium, the shoe coming in at 7, just ahead of Camp Randall at 8. I love Camp Randall. The jump around's fantastic. To me, I think it's the second best in the Big Ten. I always exclude Ohio State when I'm talking about this because it's the bias is there. So I always would say it was Beaver, and then it was Camp Randall, and then I would say the Big House next, having never played in Nebraska, plus the new teams that are coming in.
right.
I'm just really disappointed you have Ohio Stadium where it is because it's one of the few, Joshua, that it's old. They've renovated it. It still looks iconic. It kept the arches, the Roman elements of the construction. It's beautiful. It's tall. You get down inside, it's loud. Like it has the top shot is the iconic horseshoe. Like it kind of checks all the boxes that you want for modern amenities and historical elements.
And it's always full, right? Like, and I
It's
look at
always
the rest
full.
of these. I've been to games at Camp Randall, where it necessarily hasn't been full, and like people
Yeah.
will stay for a jump around. Then like fourth quarter, it completely clears out. In the horseshoe, like never have had a problem selling tickets. Husky Stadium, real quick, is an interesting one for me because I haven't been. But everybody who I know that has taken in a game there, and in particular when Washington's been good, they say it is crazy. So I'm not going to fight the people too hard on that one.
Yeah, if you haven't been there, it's tough. And so I always rely on that. I've been in it. It looks sweet. I watch it get packed and they say it gets loud. And when I played, at I think it's Century Link up there in Seattle was
Yep.
crazy loud. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to lean in on the folks in Washington. I'm sure they're going to get it going. And that's going to be good. So unfortunately, number 7, hopefully they'll climb up the list. But it's like you said, Joshua, it is always full and hopefully it'll be raucous this year for some big home games, including that final one right after Thanksgiving. No further ado, we've got him coming up. Buckus Award winner, all-time leading tackler for the St. Louis, now Los Angeles Rams organization, and the current linebacker coach at Ohio State University. James Laurinaitis joins the program next. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And, we've had a lot of players through here, some guys on their way out to the NFL back around draft time. And we've had a lot of linebackers. Had both Cody Simon. We've had C.J. Hicks. Had Steele Chambers back a minute ago. But now we're pleased to welcome in our linebacker coach. And this is the first time I believe that we've had 3 guys on here outside of Schlegs who played with me, but you're coaching, James, who have all been coached by Luke Fickell in that linebacker room. And just starting out with first, full season here as the linebackers coach coming up, went through the first spring. How has that transition been for you? Has it been any different out on the recruiting trail? Just kind of how's that all changed up?
Yeah, Bob, I think that's the first off, it's great to be with you guys, but I think the main thing was not much change from a day to day in the building as far as my role. Coach Knowles granted me a lot of wiggle room as far as individual drills the year before, running meetings. It seemed like he would step into the meeting room if he wanted a certain point to be made that wasn't getting put across. He would step in and make sure it was being communicated well, I guess is the way to put it. But the main thing that changed was you stop the role of entering certain data, right? My responsibility the year before was formations, and the entire support staff. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is the amount of work the support staff does to get a practice ready or to get the games broken down. I mean, we're talking about, you got to make sure the entire games of the next few opponents are broken down with formations, motions, adjustments, shifts, all of that information. What are the route concepts? What are the running plays? All that has to be clean. Like, you can't mess that up or else people are going to lose their minds. So that has to be clean, let alone grading the previous game, making sure the previous game that you just did is broken down. Getting scripts ready for practice, right? Drawing cards, all that stuff that happens behind the scenes, that's the support staff. So the main thing in the spring was like being able to take a deep breath, not having to draw cards. Although I didn't mind drawing cards a year ago, it's kind of, you learn a lot of football when you're drawing cards. Like, hey, what do you think the blocking scheme? What would they do if you did this? And you have to talk to the offensive guys and be like, how would you guys try to block this? It really expands your knowledge of the game. But the main thing too was just recruiting, like now being able to go on the road. And so you were always recruiting on the phone, but now it's enjoyable to be able to go there and you meet a high school coach, right? Or you get to meet the players' parents. You get to see certain people that I think is still a big part of recruiting. Like, a lot of people think it's just straight NIL nowadays, but the players and the families still have to like you. They have to like what the school presents, So I think that was an advantage of mine, is being able to be out there in front of people. I like to believe that I can carry a conversation with anybody. So it was good experience. It was good experience. You hear about all these high schools, right? And then to be able to go to certain places, like IMG, and then go out to Mater Dei and go to McKinney in Texas. And you're like, okay, now I know what these places are all about. You get to meet people and hopefully start building relationships.
Yeah.
I did go to Wayzata. I went up to Minnesota. There was a linebacker up there who's committed to the Gophers. He goes to Robbinsdale Cooper, who was in my conference growing up. We used to smoke him all the time. And, but very athletic, kind of outside backer type. And I went up there to see him. And then when you're up there, like, here's the thing about recruiting, man, you can't waste days.
Yeah.
Like, you only have so many days. So there's a tight end up in Edina, who was, got a lot of offers. So we go and get eyes on him. And then you go out to a couple other schools. And since I was out in the area, you stop by the old stomping grounds. But I'll just say this: Wayzata does not have any players currently that are good enough for the Ohio State University.
All right. So, the recruiting aspect, I think, was a big one for a lot of people with you being elevated, being able to go out on the road. And, you talked about being able to speak to anybody, which I think is important. But give us a window into kind of the relationship building and a little bit of the pitch, not only about Ohio State, but about yourself and what you can do to help develop young men.
Yeah, Joshua, I think, when you're at a place where you went to, right, when you're at your alma mater, firsthand what this school can do for you. And so I think what a lot that helps me too, is that I'm not from Ohio. I'm from out of the state. So a lot of the kids that we recruit, like when you recruit the Ohio boys, there are certain areas of the state that you always know you got to fight for kids. But for the most part, most of Ohio kids grew up knowing a lot about Ohio State. You ain't got to sell them on anything. But when you go outside, you give them a perspective of what it's like being a kid that wasn't from here, coming into this fan base, the love of Buckeye Nation, everything that it can do for you, not only on the field, but off the field. And then how now this has become a place where I want to raise our family, right? So it's like a whole circle, but you got to get the kids on campus. So they see the production, they see the development, they see all the guys that are in the National Football League, the numbers, the tweets, the social media posts, like they know all of that. A lot of the guys, when you ask them, what do you know about Ohio State? First thing they say is they're like, development, dudes in the league. And so they're aware of all of that. Then you got to get them on campus so that they can see what Columbus offers. Because a lot of people, when they hear Ohio, they think of flyover. Like, they don't understand that Columbus is this thriving city that is growing, that it's this becoming this mini tech city right in the Midwest, and that it has so much to offer, the real estate market that's booming. And there's so many opportunities now with NIL, with guys that are interested in real estate. Like, everybody's interested in real estate, it seems like, but like, we have current players on the team that are doing investments because of their NIL in the real estate market in Columbus. And so you get to show them that once they're on campus. You get to take them down to the Short North, take them down to the Arena District, and they get this pulse of, dang, man, like, yeah, Columbus has a lot going on. And it blows their mind, to be honest, when kids come from far away and they don't really have an understanding. So I think really, Joshua, is that the thing that helped me, because I don't have a long look, I don't have this like huge document that most of these coaches have of guys they've coached, right? Like, but for me, it's like, okay, these guys have been coaching, and there's a lot of really good football coaches in college football. A lot of really good football coaches. But I'd say when they were building their resume, I was still playing. I was playing the game. And so, like, we're not going to waste time with drills that look good on Instagram or Twitter. Like, we're going to get in there and use drills for real. Like, we're going to do linebacker drills that are specific to what is going to show up on game film. Like, if we're doing something in practice and I can't, like, it takes me forever to find clips of that technique on a game film, they're like, why are we wasting our time? We're wasting our time. So I think that you have to keep it, like, we can get so complicated with a lot. We got to keep it simple when it comes to the techniques that we got to develop. And being a guy that knows firsthand what has worked and what hasn't worked. You guys both know from playing the game, like, you play for coaches where you're like, man, this dude really helped me. And you take that with you. And then you play for coaches like, hey, try this. And you're like, bro, I don't know if you never played or you just never know. Like, but that is not going to work. That is not going to work. That's unrealistic. You know, so there's times, Joshua, where it's like, hey, I understand we're asking you to do a lot, right? But we're asking you to show in this gap and cover that dude way over there. But guess what? Steve Spagnuolo had me doing it. And if I could do it running a forever, you damn well could do it. You know what I mean? So, like, it's all about communicating well. And I think when you play it and you understand, you've been in their shoes, you know what they're going through at every single stage of this process, I think it resonates.
It's pretty impressive. And James, like, you know, we've talked a lot of recruiting and messaging and all those things now. We'll get into, you know, players. And so what you're doing now during your break and all that, but it just wanted this, your first class that you've kind of really brought in. You've got, you know, a linebacker out of Texas, Ohio, Florida, the best guys there, kind of all different guys. Like, what do you look for? I mean, the relationship element from different parts of the country. You mentioned, you know, down in St. Thomas Aquinas and McKinney, and then, you know, you're up in, you know, the Akron, Northeast Ohio area. Like, is there transitional elements to that? Are they all relatable? You know, how, and do those guys talk when they start to commit? Like, how does that all work now?
Yeah, I think, Bob, you got to look for guys who, for one, do they fit the program? Do they fit the culture? You never just look at a whole list of like, hey, who are the top guys in the class? And we're just going for these guys no matter what. What you do is you try to figure, like, do they fit Ohio State? Because Ohio State is not meant for everybody. You guys know that. Yeah. Like, if you want to have a really good college experience, just play some college ball, you know, go about your day. Like, no, this is not the place for you. If you want to be the best of the best at what you do, like Coach Day says it all the time, if you come to Ohio State and you play linebacker, you better be the best linebackers in the country. If you come to Ohio State and you're the Ohio State linebacker coach, you better be the best at what you're teaching. That's reality. Like, it is iron sharpens iron. That is not a cliche at Ohio State. You look at the guys going against each other, like Jeremiah Smith comes in, he's going against Denzel Ward, IGB, Jordan Hancock, and all of a sudden you start making plays. It's like, oh shoot, this guy can play. It's the best of the best. It's why when you look at Marvin Harrison's story, right, and you see the room that he walked into at wide receiver, like, he could have went anywhere else and played right away. But guess what? He's a better player when he took the field and started because of learning from the guys that are in front of him. That's been the way Ohio State's done it for a minute. And so for me, I think that's just the mentality is like, when you get into this thing, you gotta want to be the absolute best of the best. This place is not, so you have to find out what's the makeup of the kid. And so there's different things. For me, it's instincts. You know, you watch film over and over, and can the kid see it? You know what I mean? Because, like, you watch all this stuff. You watch the UC reports of the camps and all that. How do they move? And of course, all that matters. Yeah. But at the end of the day, linebacker is such a unique position because so many different body types can play it. Ryan Shazier can play linebacker. And guess what? Tommy Eichenberg can play linebacker. Yeah. And they are nothing alike, right? As far as body types, right? So, I mean, Bob, you and AJ had skill sets that are totally different than what Anthony had. Right. But all three were successful at what their role was. So I think it's all about, like, can the kid see the game? Does he love the game? Is he right for the locker room? And then from there, it's like all the other skill sets. So the three guys that we have committed are all very different. And then, yeah, they do talk. They do communicate. And I think, you know, when you're trying to bring the best in the country into the room, you got to make sure that they all get along, and they got to make sure they get along with the current guys, because there's a certain standard in the room and you got to make sure that's carried on.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we're gonna take a quick break here. That was phenomenal. We got more with James Laurinaitis here coming back on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. We appreciate you watching this. If you're seeing on Bally's, thank you. It's on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, leave comments. Always love getting some interaction there. James, you're talking about different body types of recruiting guys. You know, kind of the three guys that I think are people are looking at to be big time contributors, and you got a full room of dudes that I think are going to help. But kind of the three oldest guys, you've got Cody Simon, you got Sonny Styles, who played safety coming down, now CJ Hicks, you know, even Gabe. I mean, all of those guys are wholly different. You know, what was that process like working with them through the spring and kind of trying to understand what they do best and kind of help round them out?
Yeah, Bob, I think, you know, the more guys that we can have playing, if they earn it, I'll put that. I've always said that, like, you have to earn playing time. Like, we're not in the business of charity reps. You got to earn it. And how do you earn it? You get out there and you play your tail off and you show that you're trustworthy and you run to the football and you do all the things that you can control, right? Like effort, attitude. We always, you know, it's part of the culture, 4 to 6 A to B +2. That's the culture of Ohio State. Like, if we have to coach you on that, like, you're not going to play football for us. It's not going to happen. You got to contribute on special teams and you got to run. Like Greg Williams used to say it to us all the time, play through the echo of the whistle. Like, that is a mantra that I believe a silver bullet has to have, right? We always took pride that all 11 hats were going to be in the frame at the end, celebrating on the football. So that has to be built into you. We can't be coaching that through spring, through training camp, any of that. So I think we have to have, to be honest, I would like to have 4 or 5 guys, maybe even 6 that can rotate through. It's a much longer season. And what's ironic is that I used to get so mad at Fick. Oh, I used to get so mad at Fick when he would take me out. You would play certain teams. I remember I knew like junior and senior year, we were going to play Youngstown State. And because one of my goals was always like, I wanted to lead the Big Ten in tackles. And so, but I knew that there were going to be other guys in the Big Ten that were going to be in dogfights playing 4 quarters, right? And so I was like, dang, there's going to be a couple of games. I'm only going to get 2. And I used to get so mad at Fick when he'd be like, hey, you're done at halftime. I would get so, but now on this side of it, I'm like, guys, we gotta stay fresh. We got 16 games we're gonna have to play. We want to host the trophy. Like, we got a long season, and having been through the NFL and the grind of it, like, we got to keep guys fresh. So I think what we tried to develop in the spring was different combinations of guys. You try to flip them around, right? Do you have Cody and Sonny together? Do you have Cody and CJ together? Do you move Arvell up with CJ? Do you have Gabe and Sonny? Like, different combinations, sometimes to see how guys will react. Who maturity-wise can handle a day where, like, hey, you've been running with the ones, now you're with, we always say 1A and 1B, right? Because I'm like, we're going to have to rely on all of us, for real. Like, it's not, so we got to have a 1A group, 1B. But sometimes, like, you know the way it is, like, you go out there and you're competing, you're like, oh, I'm with the first group today. And then the next day you're with the second group. Like, do you love ball? Are you still going? Or are you going to, like, mope around? Like, what's your attitude? You know what I mean? So I think a lot of it was just seeing how guys reacted. And that's the whole beauty about when you come to a place like this. Because, you know, like, any guy in that room knows if I have a bad practice or 2 in a row, right, the guy behind me is gonna go up. I had that same anxiety when I was here. Like, it doesn't matter what accomplishments you had. All of a sudden, like, the next season, it was like everyone wants to ask about Ross Holman. They wanted to ask about Thaddeus Gibson. They wanted to ask about Mark Johnson, the 5-star from Compton. And you're like, okay, like, let's go. It motivates you. Like, all right, like, let's keep getting better. And that's why you go to Ohio State, because you're going to get exponentially better with that kind of competition day in, day out.
Now, you had mentioned there the idea of a long season. Obviously, everybody knows college football playoff is expanding. And part of the long season is the idea of competing for a championship there at the end. So in your conversations with guys in your room, like, how do you guys manage expectations for what this team's supposed to do?
Oh, it's all about the process. You know, like, most coaches say it, but if you love the game, if you love to practice, which our guys do, they love to meet, they want to know the details of football, then you all of a sudden, you're going to be just fine. The key is that when you're really evaluating yourself, there are going to be some games where you can win by a lot of points, but you have to really look at the film and be like, did we get better this week? Like, the score isn't going to reflect it, right? Like, you can tell whether our guys got better, were their habits all the same, right? Whether they're studying film the exact same way. And you constantly just have to remind them along the way, like, there will be random meeting times. I'll do it in camp. I'll probably start off my first meeting with it, right? How many days till the game? And then what I usually do is I'll put a photo of whether it's the 2016 game, post game, right? What the field looked like, or '06, or maybe I'll rotate like what footage it is. But that photo will be up on a PowerPoint to be like, you gotta visualize this. This is what it's got to look like after that game. And so just random times, right? It could be practice number 8. Yeah. That's when you're finally get sore, you're tired, you don't feel as explosive as 1, 2, and 3. And it's like, boom, how many days? Who wants to answer? And just see, like, are they just walking by the countdown clock, or is it resonating? Because when you keep that urgency in the forefront of their mind, you guys know it. Like, you can go through practices sometimes and just like, man, I'm just gonna get through this one today. Like, I'm hurting, I just gotta get through it. But all of a sudden, when you think to yourself, like, guys, we're gonna blink, and it's gonna be that week. Like, all of a sudden, you fight a little bit more. You fight a little bit more in that practice. And so I think that's the key, is like, how do we continue to motivate the guys to have that urgency that it looks like, hey, day 1 of camp, everyone's juiced up. Day 8, 9, 10, are we having that same energy, that same urgency to really chase it all? Because JP, the expectations here are you're judged by the national title photos. Some of the best teams at Ohio State, most talented teams, I should say, never won the Natty. So you're judged by the ones that get to host it at the end. And that takes a certain kind of process and certain mindset.
Absolutely. And, one of the interesting things, James, is like the change. I mean, there's no 2 days really anymore. Like, things are different than when we played. They're a lot different than they were in the 90s. Like, simulating that adversity to try to ramp it up to make sure those guys are being put in adverse situations and being challenged. How have you found ways to be able to do that?
Well, I think our practices, when we do go after it, are so intense. So, I mean, I think Coach Day does a great job. The competition between the guys is incredible. I think it's what a lot of recruits see when they come to practice, is like, holy smokes. Like, not only do you sense like the competitiveness, but you sense the organization of practice, and you also sense the brotherhood, right? Like, there could be intense battles going on, but then it's like someone makes a catch or a good play. It's like, it's a tap on the rear end. Good job. You know what I mean? Like, but there's no fighting going on. Like, you can sense the camaraderie, but like, there's a purpose, there's a grind to it. And so I think just that's part of what makes this place special. And to be honest, like, this is nothing new to us. Like, we understand it's been this way. Like, that all started with Woody. Woody started with, you win with people, right? And I think it's kind of been that way. And we've just been blessed when you're a Buckeye, is that Ohio State's always had a coach that's kind of carried that thing forward. And it all started with Woody.
Real quickly, before we get you out of here, I mean, you're welcoming a new child. You got 3 daughters, welcoming in a son. I mean, is that part of the recruiting pitch? How's Shelly been doing here before we get you out?
She's doing good. At the point now, we're in the final 9 weeks. So we will look to induce September 25th, which would be Michigan State week.
There we go.
Which, we'll see if he makes it, if he stays in till then. But I think, as you know, it's a road game. So it's like, hey, baby comes midweek, we're on the road, get a full night of sleep. And so at the hotel.
Absolutely.
But as you know, you can't complain like, oh, honey, I'm so tired. If you text that, it's over. It is over. Oh, you're tired. Yeah.
Absolutely. Shelly, she's a pistol, man. She's one of the best. So, James, we appreciate it. I know you're super busy. You got camp coming up here in about a week and a half. So thank you for spending some time with us. Give my best to your family and look forward to talking here soon.
Of course. Go Bucks.
We got more coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back in to the Bobby Carpenter Show here. We appreciate you listening. I mean, James, absolutely phenomenal home run. When you see and you listen to him and talk to him, and talks about the relationships with recruits, guys in the building, the history of Ohio State. Joshua, he's like checking every single box as a coach. And I love that he brought up the point about how recruiting, people think it's just all NIL. It's like, yeah, there's an element of that, but you still want to get to know the families. You want to make sure that you're getting the right type of guys to come here, because Ryan talks about how ultra competitive it is. They do those competitive situations in practice, and you need to have guys who are going to be in here, who are going to buy in and understand that. And so that's the most important element, probably even more so than the rankings and all that other stuff.
Well, the part that he didn't mention, but it's the reality of it is, you get the wrong guys in the building and they're either not productive or they just walk out the door. And so then you got to recruit a whole bunch of other guys. And so, again, when you put that work in and you feel like you do it right the first time, you're not worried about roster attrition. And is this guy going to be somebody who only came here for money? Things get tough, he's going to leave. A guy who's a non-competitor. And so when things get tough, he's going to leave. And so you get to miss all of that, get the right guys the first time.
Guy who's a non-competitor.
Yeah,
I love
that was the Urban thing. Are you a non-competitor?
Hey, one of the truest things ever, and I don't know where it came from. I think it was maybe Michael Jordan, Kobe. I'm not sure. I heard Urban say this. I've heard Nick Saban say this. Like Ryan's echoed it, and I've tried to like impress this upon my kids. Mediocrity doesn't like excellence, and excellence
Yep.
doesn't like mediocrity because those two things cannot coexist. Because if you're trying to be great, the people that are only trying or just okay. It can accept average. Even if sometimes you hit average, you're always trying to be great. Like those two things are in contradiction with each other all the time. And so when you create that friction, like it's hard to have those two things coexist. And I know you were in that culture with Urban for a long time.
It makes you make a decision, right? Like, are you going to be in or are you going to be out? And if you want to be out, you better go, right? Like
So
Urban used to be like, you go to Akron for the dummies, or you could go to Duke if you're a smart guy. You want to be a Zipper or Dookie. There's two choices there, but you can't be a Buckeye.
So, talking about some guys that were all in. Big Ten Media Days there this week. They're the 23rd, 24th, 25th. I believe that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week. They're going to have three players representing. And I almost wish that they would take four now. I think the ACC or SEC, they've expanded to maybe taking four guys. But you have Denzel Burke, Emeka Ibuka, and Jack Sawyer. Two defense, one offense. You've got a local guy in Jack Sawyer. He's kind of homegrown, Pickerington North. You've got Denzel, who's from Arizona, and then Emeka, who's out from the West Coast, I believe, out in Washington. And, all three of those guys, very intelligent, very different personalities. I know Emeka is kind of um, he's more of the diplomat, Joshua. If we talk to, I'd like to try to get him on the program at some point. We've had Jack and Denzel on. Both of those guys are going to be brutally honest, maybe to the point where their language might even be inappropriate sometimes.
It's good to get that honesty, though. It's like the one thing about current players, and I understand why you have to be a little bit guarded because you don't want to say the wrong thing, put your team in a bad spot. But I certainly do appreciate the honesty that we get out of some of these guys. I'm excited for it. I'm going to be out in Indy for Big Ten Media Days. So I'm looking forward to chatting these guys up as well as Coach Day and some of the other players and coaches from around the conference. Got some newcomers as well. It'll be their first time really addressing Big Ten media there. So I think this year may be a little bit different than other years. We might have some exciting sound bites and quotes that come out.
So where is the media? Where is Media Day this year, Joshua?
Indianapolis.
So it's in Indianapolis again. Did you go to the Media Days?
I did. It was in Chicago when I went.
That's why I thought it had been in Chicago before. I think they kind of rotated back and forth like the Big Ten basketball championship. Indy to me it's the home run city where you can have it. Everybody walks around. It's great.
Yes.
It's easy, safe. Now I know it's not where you're living now in Chicago, so you have to make a little bit of a trek down to get there. But I'm just curious, what are your expectations, with the Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA contingent? Do you think there'll be a large contingency of West Coast media coming out to this thing?
Well, from now, it's a little bit different with Texas and Oklahoma. I heard that the media that traveled was crazy for them, and part of it was that they were in Texas, so like travel wasn't too hectic for them to get there.
Yeah.
I do expect a decent amount of media members, right? Like Oregon, I think this is a big year for them, so their media is going to be interested. For Washington, they've got a new coach, and so I think people want to get the introduction to the Big Ten. USC, kind of new era without Caleb Williams. Certainly there'll be some interest. The UCLA one is going to be the question there. Deshaun Foster is a new coach, but like, I don't know how many people are super excited about UCLA football right now, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's the question is I don't know if there's going to be a lot of love for UCLA, USC, maybe some, but you still think as good as they are, and even at their peak, they didn't have NFL teams there. But now, like, even if they're at their peak, you've got the Lakers,
Yep.
who are number one. You've got the Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani and everything's going on out there. You've got the Rams, the Chargers with Jim Hart. Like, they're probably at best, Joshua, fifth. And that would be even if they're like a 10-2, 11-1 apex with everything that's going on. So I'm curious just to see in those big NFL cities like that where college football is at the forefront. Do people really care? Like there might be more people in LA that care about Ohio State than care about UCLA to a certain extent. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'll send you some photos of the media members there during the podium
Yeah,
availability and let you know if it's more or less than what I'm typically seeing.
absolutely. I can't wait to see that. All right, coming up next, we've got our tailgate talk where we answer your questions and comments brought to you by our friends over at Garage Beer. Stay tuned on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And now we get to do our favorite segment that we love each and every week, Tailgate Talk. It's brought to you by our friends at Garage Beer. Garage Beer is the perfect beer for you all summer long for all your get-togethers. Cookout, Garage Beer, family reunion, Garage Beer, doing some yard work, Garage Beer. I'm going to be hanging out down at the Ohio River this week. Definitely some Garage Beer there. And I even got my little shirt on to be rocking and repping. So go buy some Garage Beer. It's beer-flavored beer. And if you can find the lime, it's delicious. The best lime flavored beer you're going to find. All right. So, Joshua, we got a comment on one of our shows that we did a number of weeks back. Came in recently on Will Howard, the Ohio State quarterback. K-State fan, watched every one of his games. Great kid, very intelligent, which I think both of us would agree on that. And he was talking about Ohio State. He thinks he brought him in as more of a mentor. Talks about how he kind of lost it. And this is true. Like he lost his job to Adrian Martinez as a junior. He mentored Avery Johnson. If he was going to come back, maybe Avery would have been the starter. How he maybe overthinks some things, overanalyzes stuff, maybe some inaccuracies then leads to late throws for interceptions. And how, obviously they won the Big 12 championship, but I think people at K-State liked him, but maybe didn't necessarily think he was the most talented guy there. And I would say I don't think Will Howard is the most talented quarterback that Ohio State's had in the last decade. I mean, CJ Stroud can spin it. And you look at some of the guys that have been through here. He's different. He's a physical guy that can run the ball as well. But one of the things I'm very curious to see, and this is one thing that people underrate about, like, hey, you're bringing in this player from the transfer portal. Well, how does the player develop, and can they still get better there? Have they been coached at a high level? And I know this, and I watched Ryan coach these quarterbacks, and now maybe giving Chip the offense, Ryan can lean in on being a head coach, obviously, that CEO head coach, but also coaching the quarterbacks, Joshua, a little bit more intently. Because I don't know if I've seen a better developer of quarterbacks in college football of being able to lean in on guys' strengths and hone in and develop their mechanics, their technique, and their reads quite the way Ryan Day does.
I think all of that matters, and it's going to make a difference. I think the other part too, and this is not to not K-State because I respect them as a program, but you're dealing with a different caliber of supporting cast when you're at the Ohio State University as well. And you would think that would help improve a quarterback, right? Like maybe if it's not the perfect throw, you got guys who can cover up mistakes a little bit, go up and get the ball and make a big play there. I think we saw that a number of times a year ago. So I think from that perspective, certainly he's a guy who can step in and improve. The other part for me is, I was on a team where we were winning games with JT Barrett and love him to death, but he was not CJ Stroud. And we won the title with Cardale Jones. He was not CJ Stroud. Just watch what Georgia was able to do with Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
And he was a good quarterback, gutsy guy, did a lot of things extremely well. I don't think anybody looked at him and said this is a first round pick in the NFL draft. And so the idea that you have to have, one of the top 2-3 quarterbacks in college football to win it, like certainly it would give you a better chance. But, we watched LSU not win it with Jaden Daniels. We watched USC not win it with Caleb Williams. Like certainly you need a good, really good quarterback, but you don't need CJ Stroud necessarily. We saw Ohio State not win it with CJ Stroud in order to go and get a championship.
Yeah, I think people always look at the quarterback, and it's the most important position. Everyone acknowledges that, but it's a slice. And even if it's like, 35 to 40%, there's still another 60. And if that other 60 is really good, and you have a guy who's pretty good, like I think Will Howard and JT Barrett, it's a really good comp. And I'm gonna have to see Will Howard play in this offense with Ohio State and what he can do, and especially with Chip Kelly, and they'll get that running game going. You have a great defense, you have a great running game, you've got a good line, elite receivers. You don't have to ask this guy to go out there and be some combination of Tom Brady and Michael Vick. Like you just need him to go out there and not make mistakes. You need him to be like Stetson Bennett. For everything that people want to say about him, and he may have been average in a lot of traits, he played really well in big
Yeah.
games.
He did.
And that is what you need your quarterback to be able to do. And Will Howard has played well in big games. I think Ryan Day and Chip will set him up to be able to do that. And if you can do that, Joshua, to me, that's more important than being able to sit there and take a knee on the 50-yard line and hit the crossbar.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the idea that we were talking about before. Are you a competitor or a non-competitor, right? Because if he competes, I think it'll be all right.
Absolutely. All right, coming up, we're going to wrap up the show with some quick hitters. There's a field being renamed in college football after one of their iconic coaches, and it's happening pretty quickly. We'll tell you who that is next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, final segment of the program here. It's been a tremendous show. Thank you to James Laurinaitis for coming back on. And please, like I said, like, subscribe, comment, do all the things you need to do on YouTube. And thank you for watching if you're watching on Bally's or somewhere else. All right, quick hitters. Alabama going to name their field after Nick Saban. 1 year after retirement, they announced that. Are you surprised, Joshua, that it happened this quickly?
Yeah, I'm surprised, and I love Nick Saban. That's not Nick Saban hate segment. I don't like it right now. It was interesting watching SEC media days because it felt like a Nick Saban memorial at times, and Kalen DeBoer is sitting right there. And I think people are starting to have the realization that maybe like the SEC dominance wasn't like so much about everybody else in the SEC, and it was really like Nick Saban being that dude. And he's going to have an office in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and now he's going to have the field named after him. And if I'm Kalen DeBoer, I don't like very much of this. Like, dog, this is year one for me. And I feel like there are too many reminders of the guy who just left that was the best coach to ever coach college football. Like, help me out a little bit and give me some time.
I'm with you. I think it needs to happen. If Nick was like had terminal cancer and was going to die, then I'm like, all right, let's do it while he's still around. If something happens. But I think that like the NFL does it right with that 5-year moratorium before you can go in the Hall of Fame,
Yep.
because it gives like time, gives you perspective, and then you can come back out and then it's like refreshed, it's reinvigorating. And I think people enjoy it a little more. So I'm with you, Joshua. It should happen,
Yes.
just not this year. Like let's give Kalen time to like maybe win an SEC championship. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget when they brought Urban back for the 2002 10-year reunion, and you were there. It's 2012, and people are like, "Oh, is it too soon?" I'm like, "Too soon? It's been 10 years." Like I go, "It's been 10 years since the game, but it's been 2 since he's been gone." But the thing that helped was the fact that you guys were about to go 12-0. And
Right.
so like you had been able to pass that torch and have success. So it felt like, hey, you're in a good place. You can honor the past now without disrespecting the present.
Yeah, and that's like the whole backdrop for me is like, there's a realistic shot that Kalen DeBoer is like 9-3 in year one, and having all of the Nick Saban reminders around for a 9-3 season, I just like, and that's a good year, but that's not good for Alabama, and I just don't know how people are going to act after that.
I'm saying you give him 5 years, you've made maybe a couple playoffs, maybe you've won an SEC championship, maybe a national championship, who knows? But it felt like then it's like Kalen has become his own guy,
Yes.
and he can go out and like shake hands and like the torch has passed and everybody knows it's there, but you kind of get the approval, like just with this omnipresence like that.
Dude. Imagine just living in the shadows. Like your career is now in the shadow of Nick Saban. Like bro, and I know what I walked into when I took that job. If I'm Kalen DeBoer, I fully understand it, but it doesn't feel right.
It does. And like that's the thing, Ryan took that job from Urban here and it's been a little bit of time. And like, they're gonna honor your team this year, but it gives some time and Ryan's had success. And hopefully this year's even more of it. And all those things begin to fit and work a little bit better. Well, you know what? It's been a tremendous show. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you to James Laurinaitis. Thank you to all for watching and stay tuned, locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.